Is financial stress the biggest issue in your marriage? If so, you're not alone. In fact, 54% of couples say that money is the number one source of stress in their relationship. And if we're honest, it's not just about dollars, is it? It's the tension, it's the arguments, it's the feeling of, why do we keep fighting about this? Maybe you've even thought, if we could just make a little more, all this stress would go away. But what if I told you money isn't actually the real problem? So in today's video, we're going to get really practical and really honest because I want to help you beat financial stress as a team. So here's what we're going to talk about. Number one, why money doesn't have to create this constant stress in your marriage. Number two, how to handle your finances as a team instead of as opponents. And then number three, we're going to talk about 4 practical ways to beat financial stress and build unity, not just in your budget, but in your marriage relationship. Because when you and your spouse get on the same page financially, it changes everything. So let me tell you a personal story. When Bonnie and I first got married, finances were our number one stressor. And not just because we didn't have much money, but because we were wired completely differently. Don't get me wrong, we didn't have any money, but that wasn't the issue. See, Bonnie was the saver and I was the spender. But on the other side of the coin, I was the giver and she was the hoarder. I couldn't see her side and she couldn't see or understand mine. And because of that, it felt like we were constantly arguing about money. It felt that way because it was true. We honestly thought if we could just make X amount or a certain amount, we wouldn't stress as much. But here's what actually happened. When that pay raise finally came, the stress was still there. We make way more money now than we did 30 years ago. And guess what? If we're not careful, we can still stress about the finances. Why? Because the more money you make, the more money you spend. More money isn't the key to a stress-free marriage. But then God showed us something, and it changed everything. He showed us that He actually designed our personalities on purpose. Can you go figure that? He wanted to use both of our strengths to accomplish His goals for our finances. And once we got on His plan and started working together as a team, we began to see God do big things, even on a really small salary. And now, Bonnie's as big a giver as I am, and I love to save just as much as she does. I never thought I'd say that out loud. But let's just be real. Most of us have thought this at some point. If we could just make a little more money, things would finally calm down. But here's what we've learned the hard way. When the income goes up, the stress often goes up with it. Why? Because the more money you make, the more money you tend to spend. So if more money isn't the answer, what is? It's unity. Think about it. Finances don't just touch your wallet. They touch your priorities. They touch your security, your trust, your communication. That's why money feels so personal. It's not about math. It's about marriage. Couples don't fight because of money. They fight because they're not on the same page about money. And when you and your spouse are pulling in different directions, money becomes this wedge. But when you fight together instead of against each other, money actually becomes an opportunity to grow closer. That's what happened in our life. So here's the key. Money isn't the enemy. Disunity is the enemy. Once you understand that, everything starts to change. So if the real issue isn't money, but being divided, then let's talk about what unity actually looks like in your finances. So here's the deal. When you said I do, the Bible says that 2 became 1. 1 heart, 1 mission, 1 life. That's a 3. 1. But for some reason, a lot of couples still act like they're 2 when it comes to money. This is my account, or that's your account. You pay these bills and I'll handle these bills. You do your thing, I'll do mine. Hey, can I just lovingly say this? Separate finances create separate marriage. It does. If your money's divided, your hearts will eventually be divided too. Now, I'm not saying you can't have a little personal spending money or a little fun money envelope. That's fine. Growing up, my mom, she always had a little sock with some cash tucked away, and she'd put it in her bedside table, and she called it her hide money. Her mama, my grandmama, taught her to do that. And she'd use it for gifts or trips or just fun stuff. It was just a little bit, but it was fun. But the big stuff, the income, the bills, the goals, the future, should be ours, not yours and mine. Does that make sense? Because money, it's not just math, it's mission. God didn't give you and your spouse two separate missions. He gave you one mission. And let's be honest, when we try to do finances separately, it never really stays separate, does it? It always becomes, why did you spend on that? Or, well, that's my money. Oh, really? You know where that goes, right? But unity says we're not competing. Unity says we're partners. We don't just win unless we win together. We make decisions as a team. See, that's what unity says. And your bank account should reflect your marriage covenant. So if we're going to be a team financially, we can't just look at numbers. We have to start by asking a bigger question. And here it is. What kind of life is God actually calling us to build together? See, most couples skip this step and they jump straight into budgeting. And that's why budgeting feels like punishment instead of partnership. But here's the truth. You can't build a budget until you decide what kind of life you actually want. So let me ask you this question. Have you and your spouse ever actually sat down and said, what kind of life do we want to build? Or what matters most to us? What has God called our family to do? Or what does enough look like? What are we saying yes to? And what are we willing to say no to? Because guys, look at me. If you don't decide those things together, money will always feel like a battle. And here's why this matters. Budgeting without shared values feels like control. But budgeting with shared values, it feels like freedom. So when you know your values, money decisions, they get a lot easier. Does this purchase line up with what God's calling us to do? No? Then it's a no. Yes? Okay, let's make a plan. And here's the cool part. Most of the time, money fights aren't really about money. They're about these unspoken values and desires. If one of you's thinking, I really want security, and the other's thinking, I want to live a little. Both are valid, but until you talk about them, you'll just keep clashing. When you talk about your dreams and your values and your mission together, something amazing happens. Instead of feeling like you're on opposite teams, you start to realize, hey, I think we actually kind of want the same things. We've just never really said it out loud. And once you know your shared values, then you're ready to build a budget that actually supports them. All right, so we've talked about what matters most. Now it's time to put your money where your mission is. So let's redefine a budget for a second. A budget is not a punishment. I know it feels like it. It's not a restriction. It's not a list of, you can't do this. Here's what a budget is. A budget's a plan. It's a roadmap. It's permission to spend on what matters most. A budget is a tool to protect your marriage and your values. Every dollar needs an assignment. Because if you don't tell your money where to go, it'll just disappear. And you'll be asking, where did all this money go? We've got more month than we have money. It's like our money has legs and a driver's license. It just leaves. But here's the key. Don't just budget for bills. Budget for values and mission. I want to say that again. Write this down if you have something to write with. Don't build your budget around your bills. Build it around your values and mission. That means intentionally budgeting for things like giving to God first, or saving for the future, or you budget for fun and rest. And yes, you should budget for date nights and vacations. Investing in your marriage, your kids, within reason, right? Kids will suck all that money. Your mission as a couple, that's what you budget for. And when you budget based on values, then it no longer feels like sacrifice. It feels like purpose. And listen, this is huge. A budget you both agree on now prevents arguments from happening later. Because instead of, why did you spend on that? It becomes, hey, is that in the budget? And you already agreed on that budget together. So here's where it gets tricky. What do you do when you and your spouse are wired completely differently with money? All right, let's talk about that for a second. Every couple I've ever met has this dynamic in some form. One of you is a spender and the other is a saver. One is a giver and the other is the security guard. One wants to enjoy life and the other wants to prepare for disaster. And early in marriage, you probably thought, why can't they just be more like me? But what if? What if God actually designed you differently on purpose? Think about it. The spender keeps life joyful. The saver keeps life stable. The giver keeps your heart generous. But the planner keeps your future secure. And you budget to give. Neither one is wrong. Both are incomplete by themselves. So when you combine them, you get something really powerful. You get joy and wisdom, generosity and stability, faith and responsibility. And that's why Jesus said in Matthew 6:21, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Your spending habits reveal what you care about. So if you only use one personality, you see one side of God's heart. Here's the shift that saved our marriage. It was when we stopped seeing each other as opponents and we started seeing each other as teammates. Your differences are not there to divide you. They're there to protect you. We say that I'm the gas and Bonnie's the brakes. So Bonnie helps me pump the brakes when I'm ready to give away the car. And I help her remember that Amazon gift cards don't really count as savings, right? God put both of you in this marriage because both perspectives are needed. But here's the catch. Your different personalities only become strengths when you both actually participate in the financial process. Let me just say something really clear. Money stress will always be high. You're not getting rid of it. But especially as long as one person carries the financial load. So in so many marriages, one spouse ends up being the money person, is probably the responsible one or the details person, and the other just kind of checks out. That's what we struggle with. I'm not a detail person. She is. And maybe one of you thinks, well, I'm not good with numbers. I don't care about the budget. As long as the bills are paid, I don't want to think about it. I've heard that a lot from spouses. But here's the problem with that. When only one person handles the finances, the other person eventually feels left out, or they feel controlled, or they feel in the dark. And that leads to suspicion, to resentment, and to power struggles. Or it leads to hiding things. So let me put this in a way. Silence in money leads to suspicion, but participation builds trust. You both don't have to love Excel spreadsheets, but you both need a seat at the table together. Does that make sense? So even if one person does the day-to-day tracking, the other should still help make the decisions. Why? Because it isn't just about money. Remember, it's about unity. It's about trust. It's about ownership. You both need to ask questions. You both need to set goals. You both need to agree on the plan, and you both need to celebrate the wins along the way. Here's a simple way to do this. This is the way we do this. Create a monthly or weekly money meeting. Don't do it in the middle of an argument or not when the bills are due. Make it a calm, scheduled conversation. Talk about what came in, what went out, what's coming up, what needs adjusting, what you're thankful for, and maybe do it over coffee or some dessert. Food's always good. But don't do it right after someone just bought golf clubs or spent a bunch of money on a baseball bat for little Billy. Speaking of little Billy, we all love our kids and we do anything for them. But let's get real. Little Billy, he's expensive. He'd spend all your money. All these kids are expensive. They want stuff. And if you're not careful, they'll take over your calendar and they'll take over your bank account. And here's what a lot of couples I work with, here's what they do. One kid wants to play 3 sports. Another kid wants to dance or do art or gymnastics or horseback riding because I want to do that professionally. They're not going to do it professionally. They want the newest shoes, the coolest shoes. They want the latest iPhone 1700 whatever S because it's the best ever. They want the big birthday party. And guess what? These parents, these couples I work with, they feel guilty because they don't want to say no to little Billy because all little Billy's friends are doing it. So we give in. We overstretch the budget. We extend ourselves. And then we end up resenting each other and we get in an argument. Here's the truth. It's not our kids' job to run our finances. It's our job to lead our home with wisdom. And that'll teach your kids more than anything. What does that mean? It means that we decide together as a married couple what we will and what we won't spend on. And then we'll have a loving conversation with little Billy about why that's important. He'll learn. We define our needs and wants. We teach our kids the value of waiting, and man, that's important. We let them earn some of the extras. We model stewardship and contentment. Remember, your kids are watching you. They'll learn how to handle money based on how you handle money. And if we don't lead with a plan, our kids will unintentionally lead us into stress. And that brings us to the final and the most important point of all. Because no matter how good your budget is, it will never bring peace unless you get this last part right. So pay attention. Put God at the center of your finances. Finances aren't just practical. Finances are spiritual. It's how God provides for His kingdom and makes things happen, right? Kingdom work. Every dollar you have comes from God. We're not owners. We don't own any of this stuff. We're stewards. We're caretakers. And when we leave God out of our finances, stress goes up. Fear goes up. Blame, guess what? It goes up. But when we put Him first, peace follows. So what does it look like to put God at the center? Pray together. Pray before you plan. Ask God for wisdom. Make decisions based on faith and not on fear. Give first, not last. Trust His timing and provision. Here's a hard one. Obey even when it doesn't make sense. Because Matthew 6:21 says, where your treasure is, that's where your heart's going to be as well. And if you want your heart and your marriage to be aligned with God, your finances have to be aligned with God too. And when you follow His plan, He'll bring unity, He'll bring peace, and He'll bring provision, guys. And He does more with your little than you could ever do with a lot. I am a living testimony to that. So, if you're ready to stop letting money divide you and start letting God unite you, then the next step's going to change everything. When Bonnie and I finally stopped fighting against each other and started inviting God into our finances, everything changed. We realized something huge. Our money shouldn't determine how we spend. Our mission should. Because when you don't know your mission, you just end up reacting to bills and stress and pressure like we all do. But when you do know your mission, your money finally has a purpose. And so that's why we created the Marriage on Mission Blueprint. It's a simple step-by-step guide to help you and your spouse discover your shared calling as a couple. And it'll also help you clarify what God's asking your family to do and be, and to make financial decisions based on purpose and not pressure. Get on the same page spiritually and practically. So before you build another budget, build your mission. Because when your mission drives your money, stress goes down and unity goes up. And you start to see God do big things even on a really small salary. So I want you to click the link below and download our free Marriage on Mission Blueprint today and let God show you the purpose behind your finances. And watch what happens when you start living on mission and start living as a team. So click on this link below and grab that now.